The shove looked like a joke. Jason Cole, fresh off another win, cameras already rolling, grinned as he pushed the old janitor hard enough to send him crashing into a bucket of gray water. It splashed across the polished floor, across the man's uniform, across his face. Laughter broke out instantly. Phones went up. No one stepped forward. Not one person. The old man, Leonard Hayes, didn't argue, didn't curse, didn't even look angry. He just stood up slowly, like every joint had a memory, and picked up the fallen mop. Quiet. Too quiet for a man who'd just been humiliated in front of 200 people. But one detail slipped past the laughter. As Leonard rose, his feet adjusted, not clumsy, not shaken, but precise, balanced, like a man who knew exactly where the ground was at all times. A coach near the wall frowned, because that wasn't how a janitor moved. Jason kept smiling for the cameras. The crowd kept filming. And Leonard went back to work. But here's what none of them understood yet. That wasn't the moment the old man lost his dignity. That was the moment Jason Cole started losing everything. The gym smelled like money, not sweat, not rubber mats or metal plates. Money. Polished glass walls stretched from floor to ceiling, reflecting rows of high-end equipment and LED lights glowing cold blue across the room. Influencers leaned against mirrors, filming themselves. A few businessmen in tailored workout gear talked quietly near the juice bar, their voices low, controlled, like everything in this place. And then the doors opened. Jason Cole walked in like he owned every square foot of the building. His hoodie hung loose over his shoulders, championship gloves slung casually from one hand. There was still a faint redness across his knuckles, fresh from the fight he'd just won an hour ago. Cameras followed him before he even stepped fully inside. "Jason, over here. Man, that knockout, crazy. You're trending already." Phones rose. Smiles widened. Someone turned on a live stream before he even reached the mat. Jason grinned like he'd been born for it. "Light work," he said, voice easy, confident. "I told y'all, nobody in my weight class is touching me." Laughter. Agreement. A few whistles. Across the room, under a softer, warmer light near the back hallway, Leonard Hayes moved quietly with a mop. No one looked at him. His uniform was a faded gray. His shoes were worn but clean. The bucket beside him held cloudy water that reflected the neon lights in broken ripples. He worked in long, steady arcs, each stroke of the mop deliberate, never crossing over the last. If you watched closely, it almost looked practiced, like a pattern. But no one watched closely, except one person. Near the edge of the mat, a coach, mid-40s, arms folded, glanced over for half a second. His eyes narrowed slightly, not quite understanding why something about the old man's movement felt precise. Then the noise pulled him back. Jason was laughing again. "Yo, where's Troy?" Jason called out. "We still good for the sponsor shoot tomorrow?" "Already set," Troy answered from the front desk, barely looking up. "Anything you need. Anything." That word seemed to echo a little too easily. Jason rolled his shoulders, loose, energized. He turned, stepping backward without looking, still talking, still smiling. And that's when he saw Leonard. Or rather, when he noticed him. The old man was crossing behind him, pushing the mop forward, water sliding across the floor in a thin, reflective layer. Jason paused. A smirk crept across his face. You could almost feel the shift. The room didn't quiet, but attention tilted, just slightly. Content. Jason's eyes flicked to the nearest phone. Still recording. "Hey," he said, loud enough to carry. "Careful there, old man." Leonard stopped. He lifted his gaze, not startled, not defensive, just calm, Yes, sir, he said quietly. Floors still wet. There was something in the way he said it. Not submissive, not afraid, just factual. Jason tilted his head, amused. Yeah, he said. Looks like you got it under control. Then, without warning, without any buildup that anyone could point to later and say this is where it went wrong, he stepped forward and shoved Leonard. Not hard enough to hurt, just hard enough to humiliate. The bucket tipped first, then the mop slipped. Water splashed across the polished floor, catching the lights like shattered glass. Leonard's balance shifted, but only for a fraction of a second. He went down on one knee, one hand catching himself against the ground. Gasps, then laughter. Loud, unfiltered, immediate. Oh, yo, did you see that? Man, he went down. Phones lifted higher, some zoomed in. Someone in the back shouted, "Run it back!" Jason raised his hands, laughing with them. Relax, relax, he said, just having a little fun. Leonard stayed still for a moment. Not frozen, just still. Water soaked into the fabric at his knees. A slow drip echoed from the edge of the bucket. Around him, the gym buzzed louder than before. Voices overlapping, people replaying the moment on their screens. He didn't look at Jason. He didn't look at the cameras. He looked at the floor. Then, carefully, he placed one foot beneath him and stood. Not rushed, not shaky, just controlled. The same coach from earlier blinked. Something about that stood out. The way Leonard rose, not pushing up with force, but shifting his weight with a kind of balance you didn't see in someone his age. His center stayed steady, his posture aligned before his body fully straightened, like someone who knew exactly where every inch of himself was at all times. Jason didn't notice. He was still smiling, still feeding off the energy. "Come on, man," Jason said, shaking his head like he was disappointed. "You gotta watch where you're going." Leonard picked up the mop. Ring, drip. He reset the bucket upright, hands steady, movements unhurried. "The floor's only dangerous," he said softly, "if you forget where your feet are." A few people heard it. Not many. Those who didn't know what to do with it. Jason let out a short laugh. "Yeah? Guess I'm doing just fine then." More laughter. Leonard nodded once. "Yes, sir." And just like that, he went back to work. The mop moved again in those same long, even arcs, water spreading and gathering in clean, controlled lines. The chaos around him didn't touch him. The noise didn't stick. But the cameras kept rolling, because somewhere, deep in the instinct that drives every viral moment, people felt it. There was something off about this, something they didn't understand yet. Jason turned away first. He had already moved on. "Yo, put that clip up," he said, pointing to one of the phones. "That's funny. Already live," someone replied. "Caption it," Jason added with a grin. Old Janitor couldn't handle the pressure. More laughter, more clicks. Across the room, Leonard's reflection moved quietly in the glass wall. For a brief second, under the cold glow of the lights, his eyes met his own reflection. And in that reflection, there was no embarrassment, no anger, just a calm so deep it felt like it had been there long before this moment and would be there long after it. Behind him, the coach exhaled slowly, still watching. "That wasn't luck," he muttered under his breath. But no one heard him, because the room had already decided what it had seen, and what it had seen was a joke. The video would be online within minutes. The laughter would spread faster than the truth ever could, and somewhere in the middle of it all, a question had already begun to form. Quiet, uncomfortable, unanswered. Why did that old man move like someone who had nothing left to prove? The question didn't stay in the gym. It slipped quietly into the spaces between things, between the laughter and the replayed clips, between the comments piling up online, between the seconds when people paused and almost thought twice. Almost. But not quite enough. By sunrise, the video had a name: Old Janitor Down. It played on loop across phones in Dallas, on kitchen counters, in car dashboards, in office break rooms where people laughed through half-sipped coffee. The fall, the splash, the moment his knee hit the ground, slowed down, zoomed in, turned into something light, something easy, something disposable. No one clipped the part where he stood back up. At 5:12 a.m., Leonard Hayes stepped off the city bus 2 blocks from his house. The air still held the cool quiet of early morning, before traffic and heat settled into the streets. A streetlight flickered above him, casting a weak yellow circle onto cracked pavement. The bus pulled away with a long sigh, leaving him alone with the sound of distant trucks and the soft hum of a waking city. He adjusted the strap of his bag on his shoulder. It was the same bag Emily had noticed the night before: old canvas, worn at the corners, zipper slightly bent. It hung light, like it didn't carry much, but he never set it down. Leonard walked slowly down the block, past a boarded-up laundromat, a corner store with a flickering neon open sign, and a mural faded by years of sun and weather. Faces painted in bold colors stared out from the brick wall, names no one said anymore. He nodded once as he passed, not out of habit, out of memory. His house sat near the end of the street, a small brick place with chipped paint and a sagging porch step. Nothing about it asked for attention. Nothing about it stood out. Inside, it was quiet, not empty, just quiet. Leonard set his bag down by the door and took off his shoes. He moved through the house without turning on lights, as if he already knew where everything was. Because he did. The kitchen clock read 5:19. He filled a kettle, set it on the stove, and stood there while it heated, hands resting lightly on the counter. Outside, a car passed, tires humming against the road. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and then stopped. The kettle began to whisper. Leonard poured hot water into a chipped mug and sat at the small table by the window. The curtain shifted slightly with the morning breeze, letting in a soft gray light. On the table sat nothing but the mug and a folded newspaper from the day before. He didn't open it. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. An older model. Scratched screen. No case. There were no notifications. He held it for a moment, thumb resting near the edge, then set it face down beside the mug. Steam rose slowly between his hands. From the outside, it looked like peace, but peace and silence weren't always the same thing. Across town, the gym was already awake. Not with effort, with noise. "Yo, that clip hit 500,000 overnight," one of the trainers said, scrolling through his phone. "Man, the comments are wild. They calling him Mop Grandpa now." Laughter. At the front desk, Emily Carter didn't laugh. She sat behind the counter, headset resting loosely around her neck, staring at her screen longer than she needed to. The same video played again, muted this time. She had seen it enough. Too much. Her eyes didn't stay on Jason. They stayed on Leonard, on the moment before the fall. She leaned closer, rewinding just a few seconds. There, right there, the shift. It was small, so small no one else would notice, but she saw it now. The way Leonard's foot adjusted just before contact. Not a stumble, not surprise. A correction. Controlled. Her brows furrowed. "That's weird," she murmured. "What's weird?" Troy's voice came from behind her. Emily quickly straightened. "Nothing. Just watching the clip." Troy glanced at her screen, then smirked. Free marketing, he said. You know how much that kind of exposure costs? Emily didn't answer. Troy tapped the counter once. If Jason keeps this up, we're looking at new sponsorships by next quarter. He walked off before she could respond. Her eyes dropped back to the screen. The video ended. Restarted. She muted it again. Something about it didn't sit right. Not the shove, not the fall. Those were easy. It was everything else. By 8 a.m., Leonard was back at the gym. Earlier than most. Always earlier. The building felt different without the noise, without the cameras, without Jason's voice filling the space. The lights were softer, the air cooler, the machines still. He moved through it like he belonged there in a way no one else did. Mop, turn, step, the same pattern, long arcs across the floor, each one placed exactly where it needed to be. He didn't rush, didn't pause. His breathing stayed even, steady. At one point, a dumbbell rolled off a rack nearby. It hit the floor with a sharp clank and started to spin toward the edge. Leonard stepped forward without looking. His foot stopped it mid-roll. Not hard, just enough. He bent, picked it up, and set it back in place. No hesitation, no wasted motion. From across the room, Emily saw it. She froze for a second. Okay, that's not normal, she whispered. Leonard didn't notice her watching, or maybe he did. Either way, he kept working. Around 9:30, the first members started coming in. A businessman in a tailored hoodie walked past Leonard without a glance, talking loudly into his phone. Yeah, I saw it. Dude went down like a sack of... He laughed and kept walking. A group of younger guys followed, still replaying the video. Yo, do it again when he gets here, one of them said. Man, we gotta get closer this time. Leonard moved aside as they passed. Not stepping away, just adjusting, like he always did, like he had learned to. The room filled gradually. Music turned on. Conversations overlapped. The energy climbed back to where it had been the night before. But something had changed. Not in the room. In the way a few people looked. Not many. Just a few. Emily was one of them. The coach from yesterday was another. He stood near the far wall, arms crossed again, watching Leonard without trying to be obvious about it. Finally, he walked over. Hey, he said. Leonard looked up. Yes, sir? You been working here long? Leonard paused for a moment, then nodded. A little while. The coach studied him. Where'd you learn to move like that? Leonard's eyes didn't shift. Move like what? The coach hesitated, then shook his head slightly, like he wasn't sure how to explain what he'd seen. Never mind, he said. Just be careful around here. Leonard gave a small nod. Yes, sir. The coach walked away, but he didn't look convinced. Leonard returned to his work. The same steady rhythm. The same quiet presence. Invisible. Almost. But not completely. Not anymore. And somewhere in the noise of the gym, buried under music and laughter and the echo of last night's joke, something else was beginning to form. A pattern. A question. A feeling that didn't quite belong. Because sometimes the people you don't see are the ones who see everything. By noon, the video had crossed 1 million views. Phones buzzed across Dallas like something alive. Notifications stacked on top of each other. Likes, shares, comments, reactions from people who had never stepped foot inside ironclad gym but felt like they had witnessed something worth laughing at. Yo, this old dude folded like paper. Man really thought he belonged there. Somebody give him a helmet next time. The captions got sharper. The edits got cleaner. Someone added music. Someone slowed the fall down frame by frame. Someone zoomed in on Leonard's face, trying to catch a reaction that wasn't there. That absence made it funnier to them. Inside Ironclad, it was louder than ever. Jason stood near the center mat, scrolling through his phone, his grin growing wider with every swipe. 2 million, he said, shaking his head like he couldn't believe it. Overnight. One of the guys beside him laughed. Man, you broke the algorithm with that one. Jason chuckled. I didn't even try. Do it again, someone said. That suggestion didn't sound like a joke. Jason glanced up. Across the room, Leonard was working again. Same pace, same quiet rhythm. Mop gliding over the floor like the night before had never happened. That irritated something in Jason he didn't expect. Not anger, something smaller, something sharper. Like the joke wasn't finished yet. Yo, Jason said, loud enough to carry. Where my star at? A few heads turned, then more. Phones lifted almost automatically, like people had been waiting for something to happen again. Leonard didn't stop moving. He finished the arc he was on, then lifted the mop slightly and stepped back. Only then did he look up. Yes, sir? Jason walked toward him, slow, relaxed, performing even in the way he moved. The room shifted with him. Conversations quieted just enough to listen. You seen the video? Jason asked, holding up his phone. Leonard shook his head. No, sir. Jason smiled wider. That's a shame. You famous now. Laughter rippled through the room. Leonard nodded once. I'm glad you're doing well, sir. That wasn't the answer Jason expected. It landed flat. Awkward. For half a second, the energy dipped. Then someone in the back said, Man, he don't even care. Jason recovered quickly. Oh, I'm doing more than well, he said, stepping closer. I'm giving people what they want. He looked around, gesturing at the raised phones. They want to see something real. His eyes dropped to the mop in Leonard's hand. Let's give them something real. Without waiting for a response, Jason reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded stack of bills. He flicked them once, then dropped them, right onto the wet floor. The bills hit the surface and spread slightly, edges soaking up the water. A collective ooh rolled through the room. Jason pointed at them. Pick that up for me. Silence stretched for a moment. Not quiet. Just watching. Leonard looked down at the money, then back at Jason. I'll clean it, sir, he said gently, but I won't pick it up like that. A few people shifted. The tone had changed again. Jason's smile tightened. Like what? Like it's meant to make someone smaller. That landed, not loud, but heavy. Jason let out a short laugh, but it didn't carry the same ease as before. Man, it's not that deep, he said. Just do your job. Leonard's grip on the mop didn't change. I am doing my job. A pause. Then someone snorted. Another laugh broke out, but it sounded different this time, less certain, more forced. Jason's jaw flexed slightly. He bent down, picked up one of the wet bills, and held it between two fingers. You see this? He said, waving it lightly. This is what keeps you here. He flicked it toward Leonard's chest. The bill stuck for a second against the damp fabric, then slid down and fell to the floor again. No one laughed this time. Not right away. Leonard didn't move to pick it up. He didn't brush it off. He didn't react at all. He just stood there, steady, like the moment had already passed for him. That calm, It started to feel like something else. Something people didn't know how to handle. Jason turned away first. "Man, forget it," he muttered. "Dude's boring." He walked back toward the mat, but his energy had shifted. It wasn't as light anymore, not as controlled. Behind him, the room slowly came back to life, but not fully, not the way it had before. At the front desk, Emily's hands hovered over the keyboard. She hadn't stopped recording. Not on her phone. On the system. Every camera angle. Every interaction. She clicked through the feeds, isolating the moment when the money hit the floor. Zoom. Freeze. Rewind. Her eyes narrowed. "This isn't just bullying," she whispered. "This is something else." She didn't know what yet. But she knew one thing. This story wasn't finished. Across the gym, the coach from earlier stood still, watching Leonard again, this time longer, more carefully. He noticed something new. Not just how Leonard moved, how he didn't react. No flinch, no tension in the shoulders, no tightening in the jaw. Nothing. Like he had already been through worse. Much worse. Leonard finished cleaning the spot where the water had spread. He wrung out the mop, placed the sign back down, wet floor, and moved on to the next section. Same rhythm, same control, but now a few more eyes followed him. Not with laughter, with questions. Jason glanced over once, just for a second. Leonard didn't look back. That bothered him more than anything else, because for the first time since the video went viral, Jason wasn't sure who the moment belonged to anymore. And somewhere, beneath the noise, beneath the views, beneath the idea that this was all just entertainment, a different kind of tension had started to grow. Quiet, uncomfortable, unfinished. Because the crowd had laughed. The cameras had captured it. The internet had turned it into something easy. But something about Leonard Hayes refused to stay simple. And the more they pushed him into the spotlight, the less they seemed to understand what they were actually looking at. That night, the gym emptied slower than usual. Not because people wanted to stay, because they didn't quite know how to leave. The laughter from earlier had thinned out, replaced by something quieter, something that lingered in the air, like the last note of a song that didn't resolve. A few members hung around the weight racks longer than they needed to, scrolling through their phones, pretending to stay busy. The video was still climbing. 3 million, someone muttered. Jason heard it. He was sitting on a bench now, hoodie off, a towel draped around his neck. His phone rested in his hand, thumb flicking through comments. The numbers were good. Better than good. But the room didn't feel like it used to. Not tonight. He glanced across the floor. Leonard was still working. Same pace, same silence, same distance. It was like the man existed in a different version of the room, same walls, same lights. But none of the noise touched him. Jason frowned slightly. "Man," one of his friends said, dropping onto the bench beside him. "You broke him." Jason didn't answer. His eyes stayed on Leonard. No reaction. No attitude. "Dude just cleans." Jason scoffed. "Yeah," he said. "That's what he does." But the words didn't sit right in his mouth. Across the gym, Emily stood at the front desk, her attention drifting between the cameras and the floor. The night shift had settled in. Fewer people, softer music, the hum of machines fading into the background. She had pulled up one of the security feeds on her screen. Camera 4. The back corner. She didn't know why she chose that one. Maybe because it was quieter there. Maybe because Leonard was there. A small kids' class had ended earlier, and most of the children had gone home. But one boy remained, 9 years old, maybe 10. He stood near the edge of the mat, his gym bag slung awkwardly over one shoulder, his other hand clenched into a fist. He was practicing punches into the air, fast, messy, uneven, frustrated. Each swing threw him slightly off balance, his feet crossed, his chin lifted too high. Every movement fought against itself. No one noticed. The coaches had already left. The parents had already gone. The boy stayed. Because sometimes, leaving meant going back to something worse. Leonard passed by with his mop. He slowed, not stopping, just slowing. His eyes flicked once toward the boy, then back to the floor. He took another step, then another, and then he stopped, just for a second. The boy threw another punch, missed the imaginary target by a mile. His shoulders tensed, his breath quickened, frustration building with nowhere to go. Leonard stepped closer, quiet enough that the boy didn't notice at first. He tapped the boy's ankle lightly with the end of the mop handle. Not hard, just enough. The boy froze. Leonard didn't say anything. He nudged the boy's foot half an inch to the side. Then, with one finger, he lowered the boy's chin slightly. Just a touch. Then he stepped back. "That's it," he said softly. "Try again." The boy blinked, confused, but he reset, raised his hands, threw the same punch. This time, it landed differently. Even in the air, you could hear it. A sharper sound, a cleaner motion. His body didn't wobble. His feet held. The boy paused, eyes wide. He looked at his own fist like it belonged to someone else. Leonard had already turned away. The mop moved again. Same rhythm, same silence, as if nothing had happened. At the front desk, Emily stopped breathing. "What was that?" she whispered. She leaned closer to the screen, rewinding the footage. Tap, adjust, lower, done. 3 movements, no explanation, no demonstration, just correction. Her heart picked up speed. "That's not guessing," she said under her breath. "That's training." She looked up from the monitor. Across the gym, the boy tried again. Another punch, another clean motion. A smile started to break across his face. Leonard didn't look back. Near the wall, the same coach from earlier had seen it too. He didn't laugh, didn't speak. He just watched. Longer this time, more carefully. Because what he had just seen didn't match the story the room had decided to believe. Jason didn't see it. He was too busy scrolling, too busy chasing the next number, the next comment, the next moment that would keep the attention on him. But something had already shifted. Small, quiet, almost invisible, like the man at the center of it. Later that night, as the gym lights dimmed and the last members filtered out, Emily stayed behind longer than she needed to. She plugged in a small external drive beneath the desk, clicked through the system, selected the footage, not just from tonight, from the night before, and the night before that. Everything that involved Leonard. Everything. The progress bar crept forward, copying, saving, holding on to something she couldn't yet explain. Across the room, Leonard finished his last section of the floor. He rinsed the mop, emptied the bucket, set everything back in place. Routine. Always routine. He picked up his bag, slung it over his shoulder, and headed toward the exit. As he passed the front desk, Emily looked up. For a second, she almost said something. A question, a thank you, anything. But the words didn't come, so she just nodded. Leonard nodded back. A simple gesture. Then he walked out into the night. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Inside, the lights dimmed. The screens went dark. But somewhere, on a small silver drive in the front desk drawer. The truth had been saved. And outside, under the quiet stretch of Dallas sky, Leonard Hayes walked down the sidewalk like he always did, unnoticed, unbothered, carrying something no one had taken the time to ask about. Yet, because the question was growing, not loud, not viral, but steady. What kind of man teaches like that, and chooses to stay invisible? And how long could that kind of man stay hidden, once the world started looking a little closer? By the next afternoon, the answer didn't matter anymore, because the internet had already decided what it wanted next. More. The numbers from Jason's video had started to slow. Not drop, just slow. And in Jason's world, that was worse. He sat in his car outside Ironclad, engine idling, sunlight cutting through the windshield in sharp lines across his face. His phone was mounted on the dash, still open to his latest post. Old Janitor Down, Part 1. He hadn't even planned to write that. But the comments had. Where's Part 2? Run it back. Let him fight you. Jason leaned back in his seat, jaw tight, scrolling faster than he needed to. The praise was still there, plenty of it. But mixed in now were other voices, small ones, questioning ones. Why didn't the old guy react? Something's off. Y'all ever seen someone fall like that and not even flinch? Jason scoffed. They overthinking it, he muttered. But the words didn't land clean, because he had seen it too. That moment, right after the shove, that stillness, it didn't match the story. And Jason didn't like stories he didn't control. He grabbed his phone, switched to camera mode, and hit record. Yo, he said, voice sharp, direct. Since everybody got opinions now, let's settle it. He stepped out of the car. The Texas heat wrapped around him instantly, but he didn't slow down. He walked straight toward the gym entrance, camera still rolling. Tomorrow, he continued, pushing through the doors. I'm giving y'all what you want. Heads turned immediately. Phones came out. Energy snapped back into place like a switch had been flipped. Jason walked to the center of the mat, spinning once so the camera caught everything. Lights, people, attention. 60 seconds, he said. Me and him. A ripple moved through the room. Not laughter this time. Something else. Curiosity. Excitement. Let's see if the janitor can actually handle pressure, Jason added, lowering the camera slightly, grin returning. Or if last night was just luck. He ended the recording. But the moment didn't end. Because now the room was watching for something else. A response. Across the gym, Leonard stood near the far wall, his mop resting lightly against his shoulder. He had heard every word. Of course he had. Everyone had. Jason turned toward him, slow, deliberate, like a spotlight shifting on a stage. There he is, Jason said, my co-star. A few nervous laughs, not as loud as before. Leonard met his gaze. Calm. Unmoved. Jason walked closer. Tomorrow, he said. No cameras off. No excuses. You and me. He stepped into Leonard's space just close enough to make it personal. 60 seconds, he repeated. That's all I need. Leonard didn't step back, didn't step forward. He just stood there. Between them, the air felt different now. Thicker, quieter. Jason tilted his head. What? He said. You scared? The word hung there, heavy, waiting. Leonard took a breath. Not deep. Not dramatic, just steady. I don't fight, sir, he said. Jason let out a short laugh. Yeah, he said. I figured. He turned slightly, playing to the room again. Man don't even believe in himself. A few voices joined in, but weaker now. Less certain. Leonard's eyes didn't move. They don't need me to fight, he said softly. Jason stopped, turned back. What's that supposed to mean? Leonard looked past him, at the crowd, at the phones, at the room that had already made up its mind, then back at Jason. If I step on that mat, he said, voice calm but clear, it won't be for them. Silence. Real silence this time. Not the kind that fills quickly. The kind that stays. Jason's smile faded just a fraction. Then what's it for? He asked. Leonard held his gaze. For you, that hit. No one laughed. No one moved. For a moment, the room didn't know what to do with that answer. Jason blinked, then scoffed, louder than necessary. Man, you talking like this some kind of lesson, he said. This ain't a classroom. Leonard nodded once. No, sir, he said. It isn't. He picked up his mop, turned slightly, then paused. If I step on that mat, he added, without looking back, are you ready to learn something you won't like? The words landed quietly, but they didn't leave. Jason felt something tighten in his chest. He didn't recognize it, didn't want to. So he laughed again. Louder. Bigger. Man, I've been winning my whole life, he said. Ain't nothing you can teach me. Leonard didn't answer. He just walked away. Same steady pace, same rhythm, like the conversation had already ended for him. Behind him, the room slowly came back to life. Voices returned, phones lowered. But something had shifted again. Not enough to change the story. Not yet, but enough to make people hesitate. Jason stood in the center of the mat, watching Leonard disappear down the hallway. His friends started talking again, hyping it up. Yo, tomorrow's gonna blow up. Bro, you gotta stream it live. This is bigger than the fight last week. Jason nodded along, said the right things, played the part. But his eyes stayed on the empty hallway. Because for the first time since this started, he wasn't sure what he was walking into. And that uncertainty, that small, quiet doubt, it didn't make him back down. It made him push harder. Because in his world, you don't step away from the spotlight. You control it. And tomorrow, he was going to make sure the whole world was watching, even if he didn't fully understand what they were about to see. By morning, the gym didn't look like a gym anymore. It looked like a stage. Tripods lined the edges of the mat. Ring lights glowed bright and artificial, washing the space in a kind of sterile spotlight that flattened everything into content. Wires ran across the floor. A portable banner had been rolled out near the back. Ironclad's logo stretched wide, framed perfectly for live stream thumbnails. And people came. Not for training, not for fitness, for a moment. A show. By 11:30, the parking lot was full. Cars lined the street outside, engines ticking as they cooled in the Texas heat. Inside, voices overlapped. Cameras checked angles. People tested audio levels like they were setting up for a broadcast. Because they were. Jason stood near the center of it all. Fresh hoodie, clean sneakers, energy tight and focused. His phone sat mounted on a stand in front of him, already live. All right, he said, adjusting the angle. We got something special today. The comments were flying. Is he really doing this? Man about to embarrass that old dude again. Let's go, Jason smirked. That's what I like to see, he said. Energy. But even as he spoke, his eyes flicked, just once toward the entrance. Waiting. At the front desk, Emily stood still, She had arrived early. Earlier than everyone except Leonard. She had seen him come in quietly, same as always. No announcement, no attention. Just a nod to the empty room and straight to work. Even today. Even now. He had mopped the floor before anyone arrived. The same arcs, the same care. As if none of this mattered. As if none of this could touch him. Emily's fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the desk. "He shouldn't be here," she whispered to herself. But she didn't say it out loud. Because something in her knew. He had already decided. The noise in the room grew louder. "Where is he?" "Yo, he backing out?" Man, I knew it. The door opened. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet shift in the air. Leonard Hayes stepped inside. Same uniform, same bag over his shoulder, same steady pace. But something was different. It wasn't in his face, it wasn't in his posture. It was in the way the room reacted. Or rather, didn't. The noise didn't spike. It dropped. Just slightly. Enough to notice. Enough for people to turn. Phones lifted again, but slower this time. Less laughter. More curiosity. Leonard walked past them without looking left or right. Straight toward the mat. Jason smiled wide, stepping forward to meet him. "There he is," he said, voice loud, confident. "Thought you might not show." Leonard stopped a few feet away. "I said I would be here," he replied. Jason nodded. "Good. Makes this easier." He gestured toward the center of the mat. 60 seconds, he said. "You survived that? I'll call it even." Leonard glanced at the mat, then back at Jason. "I'm not here to win," he said. Jason laughed. "Yeah, I figured that too." Leonard shook his head slightly. "You misunderstood." A small pause. "I'm not here to fight." That landed wrong. Confused. Jason's smile faltered just enough to show it. "Then what are you here for?" he asked. Leonard stepped onto the mat. Bare shoes against polished surface. "I'm here so you can see." Jason blinked. "See what?" Leonard didn't answer. He simply stood there. Hands relaxed. Shoulders loose. Still. The crowd leaned in. The live stream numbers climbed. 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 watching live. "Yo, start it!" someone shouted. "Come on!" Jason shook his head, rolling his shoulders. "All right," he said. "Let's get this over with." Someone near the edge of the mat held up a phone timer. 3, 2, 1. Jason moved first. Fast. Confident. He stepped in with a clean jab, controlled, measured, just enough to test distance. Leonard wasn't there. Not in the way Jason expected. He hadn't jumped back. Hadn't blocked. He had simply shifted. Barely. 2 inches. Just enough. Jason frowned. Second strike. Across. Sharper. Faster. Again. Nothing. Leonard's head moved slightly offline, his body turning just enough to let the motion pass. No rush. No strain. Just absence. The room quieted. Not completely, but enough that the sound of Jason's breath started to cut through the noise. He stepped in again. More aggressive now. A combination. Left, right, body. Each one precise. Each one practiced. Each one missing. Leonard didn't counter, didn't raise his hands, didn't push back. He simply wasn't where the strikes landed. The difference was subtle, but undeniable. From the edge of the room, the coach leaned forward, eyes wide now. "That's not avoidance," he whispered. "That's control." Jason's movements grew sharper, then heavier. He stepped harder, swung faster, trying to close the gap, trying to force contact. Leonard stayed the same. Calm, measured. His feet barely made a sound against the mat, like he wasn't reacting, but already knew where the movement would go. The timer ticked. 30 seconds. The live stream chat exploded. Why can't he hit him? This looks weird. Is this staged? Jason heard none of it. All he heard was his own breathing. Louder now, faster, frustration creeping in. He stepped in again. Harder this time. A full commitment. His weight shifted too far forward. His balance broke for half a second. That was all it took. Leonard moved, not to strike, not to push, just to adjust. A small turn of the body, a redirection. Jason's momentum carried him forward, too far. His foot slipped on the edge of the mat, and suddenly, he was falling. Not dramatic, not violent, but fast enough. Wrong angle. Head first. The concrete edge just beyond the mat waited, closer than anyone realized. Gasps. Someone shouted. Jason's eyes widened, and then a hand, firm, steady, caught the back of his neck, slowed him, guided him, redirected the fall just enough that he landed on the mat instead of the hard edge. The room froze. Silence. Real silence. Jason lay there for a second, staring up at the lights, breathing hard, heart racing. Leonard stood over him, not triumphant, not proud, just present. "You're okay," he said quietly. Jason didn't answer. He couldn't, because something had just happened that didn't fit any version of the story he had built. Leonard stepped back, gave him space. The timer beeped. 60 seconds. No strikes landed, no damage done. But everything had changed. Leonard turned, picked up his bag, and walked off the mat. No celebration, no explanation. Just the same quiet exit. Behind him, the room didn't move, didn't speak, didn't understand what it had just witnessed. And for the first time since this started, the cameras kept recording, but no one knew what to say. For a few seconds, the world forgot how to react. The live stream didn't stop. The comments didn't stop. But the energy shifted. Not louder, quieter, confused. What just happened? Did he trip? No, watch that again. Jason pushed himself up slowly, breath still uneven, chest rising and falling harder than it should have for just 60 seconds. His eyes flicked to the edge of the mat, to the spot. That spot. The concrete edge just beyond the padding. Close enough. Too close. He replayed it in his head without meaning to. The moment his foot slipped. The angle of his body. The way his weight had shifted forward. There was no recovery from that. He knew it. Anyone who trained knew it. And then, that hand. Firm. Precise. Not grabbing. Not panicking. Guiding. Like it had already seen the fall before it happened. Jason swallowed hard. "What was that?" Someone whispered from the crowd. No one answered, because no one had an explanation that fit the story they wanted. Across the room, the coach who had been watching from the beginning stepped forward slowly. His face had changed. Not impressed, not entertained, serious, focused. He crouched near the mat, eyes scanning the position Jason had fallen from, then tracing the path Leonard had taken. "That wasn't luck," he said quietly. This time, a few people heard him. A few more turned. Jason looked up. "What?" The coach didn't look at him right away. He pointed to the floor. "You were going head first into concrete," he said. "Another half second. You'd have hit hard." Jason scoffed. "I had it." "No," the coach cut in. The word landed sharp. "Clean." Jason froze. The coach finally looked at him. "You didn't," he said. Silence again. The kind that presses in. Jason's jaw tightened. He didn't like being corrected. Not here. Not in front of everyone. But something inside him knew. The live stream chat exploded. "Wait, he saved him? Rewind that. Yo." He caught his head. Phones started replaying the moment, frame by frame, slow motion, zoomed in. The angle shifted. The truth, clearer now. Leonard wasn't even in the center of the frame when Jason slipped, but somehow, he was there when it mattered. A hand appeared. Perfect timing, perfect placement. Not just catching, controlling the fall. The kind of movement that didn't come from instinct. It came from years, from training, from something deeper than reaction. Jason looked toward the hallway. Leonard was gone. No speech, no acknowledgement. Just gone. Like the moment didn't belong to him. That bothered Jason more than anything. "Where'd he go?" someone asked. "Man just walked off like nothing happened." "That's weird." Jason stood up fully now, brushing off his hands, trying to shake the moment off his shoulders. "Man, it's nothing," he said, louder than needed. "I slipped. That's it." But the room didn't buy it. Not completely. Not anymore. Because now they had seen something else. Not weakness. Not luck. Something controlled. Something precise. Something that didn't match the label they had already placed on him. At the front desk, Emily was already moving. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up the security feeds. Different angles, different perspectives. She found the moment, paused it, zoomed in. Her heart started beating faster. "There," she whispered. The frame showed Jason mid-fall. Leonard just entering. Timing impossible. Unless... She scrubbed backward. Again. And again. Every time the same thing. Leonard wasn't reacting. He was already moving. Like he knew. Like he had calculated the fall before it finished. Emily leaned back slowly. "That's not normal," she said under her breath. Behind her, Troy approached. "What's going on?" he asked, glancing at the screens. "Nothing," Emily said quickly. Too quickly. Troy frowned slightly but didn't push. His attention shifted to the main floor instead. To the crowd. To the phones. To the potential problem forming in real time. "This isn't how this was supposed to go," he muttered. Because now, the narrative wasn't clean anymore. It wasn't just a viral moment. It was a question, and questions were dangerous. Jason grabbed his phone again, checking the live comments. The tone had changed. Not completely, but enough. He didn't even throw a punch. That's not fear. That's control. Who is this guy? Jason's thumb hovered over the screen. He didn't scroll, didn't respond. Because for the first time since this started, he didn't have the answer. He looked back toward the hallway again. Empty. Quiet. Gone. And in that absence, something else began to settle in. Not fear, not yet. Something smaller, but heavier doubt. Because if Leonard Hayes wasn't just a janitor, then what exactly had Jason just stepped into? And more importantly, what had he just walked away from, without understanding? Outside, the sun had begun to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Inside, the lights still burned bright. The cameras still recorded. The comments still rolled in. But the room had changed. The laughter didn't come as easily. The jokes didn't land the same way. Because now, they had seen something they couldn't unsee, and the man they had turned into a joke had just become a mystery they couldn't ignore. For a few hours, the internet didn't know what to do with it. Clips of the fall replayed again and again. Slow-motion edits circled Leonard's hand catching Jason's head. People argued in the comments, some calling it skill, others calling it coincidence. But confusion doesn't last long online. Confusion gets replaced by something louder, by something cleaner, by something easier to believe. By that night, a new video appeared. Same gym, same people, same moment, different story. The edit was tight, professional, cut down to just under a minute. No shove, no baiting, no money thrown on the floor, no missed strikes, no quiet control. Only one thing remained: Jason falling, and Leonard standing over him. The clip froze at the moment Jason hit the mat. Zoom in. Caption: 68-year-old janitor attacks local champion. The music underneath was tense, urgent, dangerous. The voiceover didn't scream. It didn't need to. It spoke calmly, like it already knew the truth. Witnesses report that an elderly janitor with unknown martial arts training assaulted a young athlete during a live demonstration. The comments shifted instantly. What kind of psycho hides like that? That's messed up. Dude could have killed him. Why is a trained fighter working around kids? The algorithm did the rest. 10,000 views, 50,000, 200,000. Within hours, it passed the original clip. Because outrage travels faster than truth. Inside a glass office downtown, far from the gym, a man watched the video without expression. Preston Cole, Jason's father, real estate developer, investor, the kind of man whose name sat on buildings instead of business cards. He watched the edited version twice. Then he tapped the desk lightly. "Clean," he said. Across from him, a woman in a tailored suit leaned back in her chair. Victoria Sterling. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. "People don't watch full footage," she said calmly. "They watch what confirms what they already believe." Preston nodded. "And what do they believe?" Victoria glanced at the paused frame. "A young champion was attacked," she said, "and no one protected him." Preston leaned forward slightly. "Good," he said. "Let's keep it that way." Back at Ironclad, the atmosphere had changed overnight. The same walls, the same lights, but something colder now. Members whispered instead of laughed. Phones stayed out, but not for entertainment, for judgment. Jason walked in late, sunglasses on, hoodie pulled low. His shoulder was wrapped. Not badly, just enough to be seen. Troy had insisted. "Optics," he said. Jason didn't argue, because part of him needed it, needed something to hold on to, something to make the story simpler, easier. Across the room, Leonard stood near the supply closet. He hadn't watched the video, didn't scroll, didn't comment, but he felt it. The shift, the way people looked at him now, not amused, not dismissive, wary, like they had just discovered something dangerous. A few parents pulled their kids closer when he passed. Someone whispered, "That's him." Leonard kept walking. Same pace, same calm. But something inside him tightened. Not fear, something older. Something familiar. At the front desk, Emily stared at her screen, her face pale. "I knew it," she whispered. She clicked between files, original footage, full angles, every second, everything that had been cut out. "This isn't a mistake," she said. "This is deliberate." Her fingers hovered over the mouse, then moved faster. Copy, duplicate, backup, again and again, because now she understood. This wasn't about a moment anymore. It was about control. Troy approached her, voice low. "Delete anything older than policy," he said without looking at her directly. Emily didn't respond. "I'm serious," he added. "Legal's involved now." That landed. Legal, meaning bigger than the gym, bigger than Jason. Emily nodded slowly. "Of course," she said, but her hand didn't stop moving, because somewhere deep down, she knew this wasn't over, not even close. Outside, the sky darkened early, clouds rolling in thick and heavy. A light rain began to fall, tapping softly against the gym windows. Behind the building, near the service entrance, Leonard stood alone. The yellow light above the door flickered faintly, casting long shadows across the wet pavement. In his hand was a folded envelope. Inside, a termination notice. Liability concerns. Temporary suspension. Pending investigation. 9 years. Reduced to paper. He read it once, then folded it again. Carefully. Deliberately. As if the way he handled it still mattered. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Leonard looked out into the rain. Water gathered along the edges of the pavement, reflecting the dim light above him. For a moment, he didn't move, didn't react. Then slowly, he stepped forward, into the rain. No umbrella, no hurry. Just walking. Same steady pace. But this time, there was no floor to clean, no room to return to, no place waiting for him. Only the sound of rain hitting the ground. And somewhere behind him, inside that brightly lit building, the story continued without him. Twisted, edited, controlled. Until the truth became something harder to recognize. And somewhere ahead, a different story waited. One that hadn't been told yet. One that couldn't be cut down to 60 seconds. Because some truths take much longer to come back. The rain followed Leonard all the way home. Not heavy, just steady. Like something that didn't rush, didn't force its way in, but refused to leave. Water ran along the edges of the sidewalk, pooling in shallow dips, reflecting the dim orange glow of streetlights. Cars passed now and then, tires hissing against wet asphalt, but no one slowed down. No one noticed him. By the time Leonard reached his house, his uniform was damp, darkened in patches where the rain had settled into the fabric. He didn't brush it off, didn't hurry inside. He stood on the small porch for a moment. Just stood there. The kind of pause that wasn't about the weather. It was about crossing something. Finally, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his keys, and unlocked the door. The house greeted him the same way it always did. Quiet. Still. Unchanged. Leonard stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click that echoed more than it should have. He set his bag down by the wall, removed his shoes, walked into the kitchen without turning on the light. The faint glow from outside filtered through the window, just enough to outline the table, the chair, the shape of things that hadn't moved in years. He sat down slowly. His hands rested on the table. Empty. For a long time, he didn't move. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. But it wasn't peaceful either. It was full. Full of things that had never been said out loud. Across town, the story was moving faster than the rain. The edited video had crossed 5 million views. Local news picked it up before midnight. A short segment, 30 seconds, a headline that didn't ask questions. Elderly gym worker injures rising athlete. The anchor's voice stayed neutral. But the framing did the work. Authorities are reviewing the incident. Sources suggest the individual may have concealed prior combat training. Clips rolled. Only the ones that fit. No shove. No taunting. No moment of control. Only the fall. Only the impact. Only the image they needed. Back at Ironclad, the shift was complete. Leonard's name wasn't spoken. It didn't need to be. Everyone knew who he was. Troy stood in his office, phone pressed to his ear, pacing slowly. "Yes," he said. "We've suspended him." Pause. "Yes, pending investigation." Another pause. "No, we don't want liability tied to the facility." He glanced through the glass wall toward the empty spot where Leonard used to stand. His voice dropped. "We're cooperating fully." At the front desk, Emily sat frozen. The news clip played silently on her screen. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. "This is wrong," she whispered. She reached for the drive in the drawer, held it in her hand. The weight of it felt heavier now, because now she understood what it meant. Not just evidence, responsibility. Back in the quiet house, Leonard finally moved, slowly, deliberately. He reached down beside the chair and pulled his bag closer. The old canvas creaked softly as he unzipped it. Inside, there wasn't much. A folded change of clothes, a small towel, and beneath them, a second zipper. Hidden. Older. He hesitated. His hand rested on it. For a long moment he didn't open it. Didn't need to. He already knew what was inside. His thumb brushed the edge of the zipper. Once. Twice. Then, slowly, he pulled it open. Inside the inner compartment sat a small wooden box. Dark, worn, edges softened by time. It didn't belong to the rest of the bag. It belonged to something older. Something that had been carried, not used. Leonard lifted it carefully, set it on the table. The sound of wood touching wood echoed softly in the room. He stared at it. Not like an object, like a memory. Around his neck, beneath his damp shirt, a thin chain rested against his skin. At the end of it, a small key. He reached up, pulled it free, held it between his fingers. The metal was warm from his body. Familiar. Too familiar. He lowered it toward the lock. Stopped. His hand hovered there. Because opening the box wasn't about curiosity. It was about consequence. Outside, the rain tapped steadily against the window. Inside, time seemed to slow. Finally, he turned the key. The lock clicked open. Soft. Final. Leonard lifted the lid. Inside, three things rested in silence. A worn black belt. Edges faded. Fabric softened from years of use. A photograph. 4 figures standing beneath a banner. Smiling. Victorious. One of them, younger, stronger, standing at the center. Leonard's eyes lingered there, then moved to the empty space beside him. The place where someone else had once stood, someone no longer in the frame. And beneath the photo, a small old phone, outdated, scratched, still charged. Leonard didn't touch it at first. He just looked. The room felt smaller now, tighter, like the past had stepped forward without asking permission. Finally, he picked up the phone, held it in his hand. His thumb hovered over the screen. One message. Saved. Unopened. For a long time. Too long. His thumb moved. stopped, moved again, then pressed. The screen flickered, audio loaded. A voice filled the room, young, warm, full of something that hadn't been broken yet. "Hey, Dad, we're about an hour out. Coach says everything's lined up. You should see the place, it's huge." Leonard closed his eyes, didn't stop it, didn't rewind. "Just let it play. I'm gonna bring it home this time. I promise." The message ended. Silence rushed back in, but it didn't feel the same anymore. Leonard lowered the phone slowly, set it beside the box. His hand rested on the table. Still, steady. But his shoulders, they had shifted, just slightly, as if something heavy had been set down or picked back up. Outside, the rain began to ease. Across the city, the story continued to twist, to spread, to harden into something that looked like truth. But here, in this quiet room, the real story had just begun to surface. Not for the world, not yet, but for the man who had buried it, and now had finally opened the door. The next morning didn't feel like morning. It felt like a countdown. Clouds hung low over Dallas, turning the sky into a dull gray sheet that pressed down on everything beneath it. Traffic moved slower. Conversations stayed shorter. Even the wind seemed unsure which way to go. At 8:45 a.m., Leonard Hayes stood outside the county building. The courthouse. Tall, cold, unforgiving. The kind of place where stories didn't matter unless they could be proven. And even then, not always. He wore his best clothes. A simple dark suit. Pressed. Clean. Old but cared for. The kind of outfit a man keeps for moments he hopes never come. In his hand he held a thin folder. Nothing else. No lawyer. No backup. Just paper. And truth. Inside, the hallway buzzed with quiet urgency. Reporters gathered near the doors, cameras resting on shoulders, microphones clutched tightly. They spoke in low tones, rehearsing lines, preparing angles. A local controversy, an elderly man accused of rising athlete, words shaped before facts arrived. Leonard walked past them. No one stopped him. Some didn't recognize him. Others did, but didn't speak because now he wasn't invisible. He was something else. A headline. Inside the courtroom, the air felt heavier. Jason sat at the front, his arm still wrapped, his posture stiff, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. He hadn't slept. Not really. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it again. The fall, the hand, the moment everything shifted. Beside him, Preston Cole sat composed, calm, already certain of the outcome. His suit was sharp, his expression sharper. Across from them, Victoria Sterling reviewed her notes without looking up. Control, precision, strategy. Everything about her presence said the same thing. This would go their way. The room filled slowly. Observers, press, people who had seen the clips and wanted to see the ending. At the back, Emily slipped into a seat, her hands wrapped tightly around a small silver drive. She hadn't slept either. Not since she realized what she was holding. Not since she understood what it could change. Leonard entered last. The room shifted when he did. Not loud, but noticeable. A few whispers, a few glances. He walked forward without hesitation and took his place, alone. No legal team, no defense prepared in polished language, just him. The judge entered. Everyone stood, sat. Silence settled. "Mr. Hayes," the judge said, adjusting his glasses. "You understand the nature of the claim against you?" Leonard nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Do you have legal representation? No, sir. A pause. The judge studied him for a moment, then nodded. Very well. Proceed. Victoria stood. Smooth, confident. She moved to the center like she belonged there. Your Honor, she began, this case concerns an incident in which my client, a young athlete, was subjected to physical harm by an individual who concealed his training and intent. She paced slowly. Measured. The defendant is not simply a janitor, she continued. He is a trained fighter who chose to engage in physical activity with a younger, unprepared individual, resulting in injury. She gestured toward the screen. The edited video played. Again, the same version, the same cuts, the same missing truth. Jason's fall, Leonard standing over him. Freeze frame, gasps, whispers. It looked bad, because it was designed to. Victoria turned back to the judge. This was not an accident, she said. This was a calculated act by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. She paused. Let it settle. Mr. Hayes, she said, turning toward him. How long have you been trained in combat disciplines? Leonard didn't rush his answer. A long time, he said. Years? She pressed. Yes, ma'am. Decades? Yes, ma'am. A murmur moved through the room. Victoria nodded slightly. And during those decades, she continued, did you ever inform the gym of your background? No, ma'am. So you concealed it. Leonard looked at her. I didn't think it mattered. That answer didn't land the way she expected. She adjusted. You didn't think it mattered that you had the ability to harm someone? Leonard's voice stayed calm. I don't use it that way. Victoria smiled faintly. But you did that day. No, ma'am. The room held its breath. She tilted her head. You're saying the video is incorrect? Leonard didn't look at the screen. I'm saying it's incomplete. That word landed. Incomplete. Not wrong. Not denied. Just missing something. Victoria turned back to the judge. Your Honor, we have clear visual evidence of part of what happened, a voice interrupted. Everyone turned. The sound came from the back. Emily stood, her hands shaking, but her voice didn't. I have the rest, she said. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Victoria frowned. Who are you? She asked. Emily Carter, she replied. Front desk at Ironclad. She stepped forward, each step louder than it should have been. I managed the security system, she said, and I saved everything. She held up the drive. The room shifted. Not curiosity this time. Tension. Because now, something real was about to enter the room. Victoria's expression tightened. That footage has already been reviewed. No, Emily said. Stronger now. You reviewed what you wanted to show. She reached the front, looked at the judge. This is the full recording, she said. Every angle, every second. The judge leaned back slightly. Interested. Careful. Play it, he said. The screen went dark, then lit up again. A different video, longer, uncut. The room watched. The shove, the laughter, the baiting, the challenge. Every missing piece, every moment that had been removed. And then, the fall. Slower this time. Clearer. Jason slipping. Leonard moving. Not attacking. Not striking. Catching. Guiding. Saving. The room didn't react immediately. It couldn't. Because the truth doesn't hit like noise. It settles. It sinks. It changes everything quietly. Then all at once. When the video ended, no one spoke. Not for 3 full seconds. Then, at a single voice from the back, "The coach." "That's not assault," he said. "That's control." More voices followed. Low, uncertain, then stronger. The story had cracked. And once a story cracks, it doesn't go back the same way. Victoria stood still. For the first time, she didn't have the room. Jason stared at the screen, at the moment, at the hand that had stopped him from hitting the ground. His throat tightened, because now there was no edit, no filter, no version of events that could hide what had actually happened. He looked at Leonard. Really looked this time, and for the first time, he saw him. Not as a janitor, not as a joke, not as content, but as something else entirely. Something he had never bothered to understand, and now couldn't ignore. The silence in the courtroom didn't break. It shifted, like something heavy had been moved, and everyone could feel the weight of it settling into a new place. Jason didn't look at the screen anymore. He couldn't, because the truth didn't just sit out there in front of him. It had turned inward. Every frame of that footage replayed behind his eyes. The fall, the panic, the hand, the moment he should have hit the ground, and didn't. He swallowed hard. His wrapped shoulder suddenly felt heavier than before. Not injured. Exposed. At the front, Victoria Sterling stood still, her composure intact, but thinner now, like glass under pressure. She opened her mouth, closed it, adjusted her stance, then tried again. "Your Honor," she said carefully, "even if the full footage suggests a different sequence of events, it does not change the fact that Mr. Hayes engaged physically. That's enough." The judge's voice cut clean through the room. Not loud, not emotional. Final. Victoria stopped. The judge leaned forward slightly, fingers folded. "I've seen enough to understand the nature of what occurred," he said. "And more importantly, what did not occur." A pause. He turned his attention toward Leonard. "Mr. Hayes," he said, "you showed restraint where most would not have." Leonard didn't respond. He simply nodded once. The judge shifted his gaze. "To the plaintiff," he continued. Jason's head lifted slowly. For the first time since the hearing began, all eyes were on him. Not as a champion, not as a victim, but as something else. A man standing in the space between who he thought he was and who he had just been shown to be. "Do you wish to continue this claim?" the judge asked. The question hung there, heavy, irreversible. Jason opened his mouth. No words came. Because for the first time in his life, winning wasn't the point, and losing wasn't what this felt like either. He glanced at his father. Preston's jaw was tight, his expression controlled, but his eyes, they pushed. Finish it. Control it. Maintain it. That's what they had always done. Jason looked back at Leonard. Really looked. Saw the man standing there without a lawyer, without anger, without defense, just standing. Like he had nothing left to prove. That realization hit harder than anything that had happened on the mat. Jason took a breath, then another. His voice came out quieter than expected. "No, Your Honor," he said. The room stilled. Victoria turned sharply. "Jason, I'm dropping it," he said, more clearly now. The words landed, final, unedited. The judge nodded once. "Very well," he said. "The claim is dismissed." The gavel came down, a single strike, clean, decisive. And just like that, the story changed. But not completely. Not yet. Because truth doesn't just need to be revealed, it needs to be understood. And there was still one piece missing. At the back of the room, a man stood. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a simple gray suit that didn't need to make a statement. His presence did that for him. Marcus Reed, a name that carried weight in certain circles. Not celebrity, not noise. Respect. He stepped forward. "Your Honor," he said, voice steady. "If I may." The judge looked at him, curious. Briefly, he said. Marcus nodded, then turned toward the room, toward the cameras, toward the story that had just unraveled. "The man you've been calling a janitor," he said, "trained me." A ripple moved through the room. Confusion, recognition, shock. Marcus continued. "And not just me." He gestured slightly. Two figures stood from the back rows, one woman, one man. Both composed, both known. "3 world champions," Marcus said, "all trained by Leonard Hayes." The words didn't explode. They settled, like truth does. Slow, certain, unavoidable. Victoria didn't interrupt. She couldn't. Because now this wasn't about argument. It was about revelation. Marcus stepped closer. 15 years ago, he said, Leonard walked away from everything. Titles, recognition, coaching, all of it. He glanced at Leonard, then back at the room. After his son died. The silence deepened. Not uncomfortable, not tense. Respectful. Because now, they understood what had been missing. Not just from the video, from the man. Jason's breath caught slightly. He hadn't known, hadn't asked, hadn't cared. Until now. Marcus's voice softened. He didn't leave because he was dangerous, he said. He left because he couldn't forgive himself for what the sport took from him. Leonard stood still, but his shoulders, they dropped, just slightly, like a weight had finally been acknowledged, not removed, but seen. The room didn't move, didn't speak, because now, the man they had laughed at had a name, a history, a cost, and none of it fit the story they had chosen to believe. Jason took a step forward, slow, uncertain. His voice came out rough. "I didn't know," he said. No one answered. Because that wasn't the point. He looked at Leonard. "I thought you were just..." He stopped. Couldn't finish the sentence. Because now, he understood what that sentence really meant. Leonard met his eyes. Calm. Steady, not angry. Not forgiving. Just present. Jason swallowed. "I'm sorry," he said. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They carried. Because they were real, Leonard didn't answer right away. Some apologies aren't meant to be rushed. Finally, he nodded once. Not acceptance, not rejection, just acknowledgement. The kind that says, "You've said it, now live it." Outside the courtroom, the world was already shifting again. Clips of the full footage spread. New headlines formed. Janitor saves athlete. Hidden coach revealed. The story you didn't see. The truth was catching up. Slowly, but surely. Inside, the room began to move again. People stood. Voices returned. Cameras turned. But something had changed. Not just the story. The way people looked. The way they understood. the way they remembered. Because now, they couldn't unsee it. They couldn't go back to the version that made things easy, because the truth had a name, and they had forgotten it. Until now. The story didn't end in the courtroom. It spread, faster than the lie ever had. By evening, every major clip had been replaced, not erased, outnumbered. The full footage replayed across screens. Leonard standing calm while chaos circled him. Leonard stepping in at the exact moment it mattered. Leonard catching a fall that could have changed a life in a very different way. The narrative didn't just shift, it flipped. Hidden coach saves fighter. The man behind 3 champions. The story we got wrong. People who had laughed went quiet. People who had shared the first video shared the second one twice as fast, because correcting a mistake feels louder than making one. At Ironclad, things moved quickly, too quickly for anyone to pretend nothing had happened. By Tuesday morning, Troy's office was empty. His name had already been removed from the door. The board didn't release a statement. They didn't need to. Silence this time meant accountability. Jason didn't return that day, or the day after. His sponsors didn't call. They emailed, short messages, professional, careful. Due to recent developments, aligning with brand values. Contracts disappeared the same way they had arrived. Fast, without warning. His follower count dropped by the hour, not all at once, but steadily. The noise around him faded, and for the first time in years, there was nothing left to hide behind. 3 days later, Leonard stood in the same gym again, same building, different energy. The neon lights felt warmer now, less sharp, less cold. He didn't walk in through the side entrance this time. He used the front door. No one stopped him. No one looked away. People nodded, some quietly, some with hesitation. But they saw him. Fully. For the first time. Inside, the main floor had been cleared. No cameras. No live streams. Just mats. Clean. Open. Waiting. Emily stood near the front desk, watching as Leonard stepped inside. Her eyes met his, and this time, she didn't hesitate. "Mr. Hayes," she said. The name felt right in the room. Leonard gave a small nod. "Thank you," he said. She didn't ask what for. She already knew. At the center of the mat, a group of children sat cross-legged in a loose circle, some from the neighborhood, some from the gym, different backgrounds, same curiosity. The boy from before sat in the front, hands on his knees, waiting. Leonard walked onto the mat slowly, not like a man returning to power, like a man returning to purpose. He set his bag down, reached inside, and for the first time in years, he took out the belt, worn, faded, but still whole. The room didn't react, didn't need to. They understood what it meant. Leonard tied it around his waist, his hands steady. No ceremony, just truth. He looked at the children, then at the space around them. "This floor," he said, voice calm, carrying without effort, "doesn't belong to anyone." The kids leaned in slightly. "It teaches you what you bring to it," he continued. "If you bring ego, it will show you where you fall." A few adults at the edge of the room listened now, quiet, respectful. "If you bring patience," he said, "it will show you how to stand." He stepped forward, demonstrated a simple stance, feet grounded, balanced, still. "First lesson," he said, "learn how to walk away." The kids nodded, some understanding, Some not yet. That's harder than it sounds, Leonard added. At the edge of the room, the door opened. No one noticed at first. Jason stepped inside. No hoodie, no cameras, no entourage, just him. He stood there for a moment, unsure, not of where to go, of whether he belonged. The kids hadn't turned yet, but a few adults had. Whispers didn't start. Judgment didn't rise. Because this wasn't that room anymore. This was something else. Jason walked slowly toward the mat, each step heavier than the last. When he reached the edge, he stopped, waited. Leonard didn't look at him immediately. He finished adjusting a student's stance, corrected a shoulder, shifted a foot. Then, he turned. Their eyes met. No anger, no resentment, just recognition. Jason swallowed. His voice came out lower than anyone had ever heard it. "Can I learn?" he asked. No excuses, no explanations. Just that. The room held still, because this moment wasn't about punishment. It was about choice. Leonard studied him for a second, then nodded toward the corner. "Start there," he said. Jason looked. A mop, leaning against the wall. Simple. Unavoidable. He hesitated for half a second, then walked over, picked it up. The handle felt unfamiliar in his hands. He stepped onto the floor, began to move, awkward at first, then slower, more careful. He followed the lines Leonard had once walked. Long arcs, steady motion. The room didn't laugh, didn't react. Because now, they understood. The floor teaches everyone. Not at the same time, not in the same way. But eventually. 6 months later, Ironclad didn't look the same. The mats were fuller, not with cameras, with people. Kids from neighborhoods that didn't have places like this before. Parents who stayed and watched. Volunteers who showed up without being asked. The program had a name now. The Hayes Foundation. Not chosen by Leonard. Given to him. And accepted quietly. Marcus Reed taught on Tuesdays. Other champions visited when they could. No announcements. No publicity. Just presence. Jason was there every week. Always early. Always last to leave. He didn't talk much. Didn't post. Didn't perform. He cleaned. He trained. He listened. The numbers that once defined him didn't matter anymore. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the gym in soft gold light, Leonard stood near the entrance, watching the class. The boy from before moved differently now, balanced, confident, grounded. Jason worked nearby, guiding another student through the same stance he had once struggled to understand. Leonard nodded slightly. Not approval. Acknowledgement. The kind that comes from seeing someone choose a different path. Outside, the city moved on. Faster, louder, always chasing the next story. But inside, something had settled. Something steady. Something real. Because in the end, the fight was never the point. The fall wasn't the story. And the truth didn't need a spotlight. It just needed time. And someone willing to see it. So here's the question that remains. When the room is laughing, and no one stands up.
Do you stay silent or do you become the one who changes what the room sees? Because in the end, it wasn't the fight people remember, it was the moment. Leonard Hayes handed Jason Cole a mop and showed him what real strength begins. This story reminds us that the true cause of judgment isn't just what it does to others, but what it reveals about who we choose to be. Jason didn't lose his title that day. He faced the weight of becoming someone he no longer wanted to be. So today, think about this. Who's the Leonard in your life that you overlook? And the next time you walk in a room, pay attention to how you treat the people, the person no one else is watching, because that moment say everything about you. If this story means something to you, comment one below and tell me, have you ever realized today that someone you ignored was actually the most important person in the room? Stay with me, because the next story may make you see someone you've been working past your whole life.